My name is Mathilde Stoleroff. I work in the education sector in a section called Global Citizenship and Peace Education at UNESCO headquarters in Paris. And, is this, as Alban mentioned, it's the UNESCO Culture and Arts Education Week. It's the first year that it's called under this designation in Arts Education Week. So now it includes culture, meaning that it's broader. And we're really happy to see these events happening worldwide. We participated today in a webinar and today's webinar. So it's really a momentum to raise awareness. And I think all of us, I mean, here, we know that culture and arts can contribute to peaceful, just, and resilient societies, but we also know that there's a very big need to continue advocating and for showcasing their impact on the ground, so that culture and arts becomes institutionalized and adequately supported in contexts affected by conflict, crisis, and post-conflict reconstruction. And so I think this is why this event and others organized by Art to Face are extremely important. So today I'm joined by my colleague Paula, and our aim of the presentation is to walk you through the new implementation guide for the UNESCO Framework for Culture and Arts Education. So explain what it contains and show you how it can be used in diverse contexts. Um, so the framework itself. Um, it was adopted in 2024 at the World Conference on Culture and Arts Education. And it really is an important milestone because for the first time, we have the international community coming together around this new comprehensive reference, let's say, for integrating culture and the arts in education systems worldwide. And it was developed through a broad, consultative, and member state-led process, and it involved over 2,300 stakeholders. And importantly, it engaged both ministries of culture and education. And this, let's say, the draft of the framework was submitted to two rounds of written consultation with member states. And it was adopted by member states at the conference. Um, so this slide provides you a quick overview of the overall framework, the architecture of the framework. I won't go through everything that you see on the screen, but just to highlight a few key elements. The framework builds on 7 guiding principles that you see in the first column, so including human rights, gender equality, cultural diversity, inclusion, lifelong and life-wide learning. And it identifies 3 major objectives. It seeks, on the one hand, to advance peace and sustainable development, harness digital technologies and AI, and, of course, integrate culture and arts education into policies and programs. The framework then moves into 5 strategic goals, and it suggests 8 implementation modalities, which I and Paula will later on present briefly. So it's in 2024 that we have this comprehensive global reference framework for integrating culture and the arts into education systems and learning ecosystems worldwide. And it invites us to really think systemically about the issues. So we're talking about culture and arts education ecosystems. So you have governance and policy, learning environments, teachers and educators, digital technologies, partnerships, research and data, and assessment. But the document itself, I don't know if you had a chance to go over it. It's a super, super dense document. It provides direction, but it's really it doesn't tell us how to go about how to support member states operationalize the framework. So this is why we in 2025 UNESCO launched the implementation guidance. And sorry, yeah, next slide. Click once more. Thank you. And we launched this implementation guidance for the framework for culture and arts education at the World Conference at Mundiacult in Barcelona in October of last year. And it's really, as I mentioned, designed to make the framework operational. So its primary audience is policymakers in the education and culture sectors, but it also aims to support teachers, artists, culture professionals, and practitioners. So people who work daily on these issues. In line with the framework's guiding principles, the guidance is clear. It's to ensure that all learners at all ages have access to inclusive, lifelong opportunities and to foster their cultural expression and foster creativity. That educators have an opportunity to strengthen their capacities, that culture and education stakeholders at every level, let's say, collaborate effectively, and that societies value cultural diversity as a foundation for resilience, peace, and sustainable development. In the next slide, you'll see it shows how it's structured, let's say, the guidance. So it's logic. So each strategic goal and implementation modality follows a similar structure. And it starts with guiding questions, recommendations for policymakers, tips for practitioners, and it has expected outcomes. And each of them is accompanied by illustrative practices. So the intention really is to move from reflection to implementation. At the same time, it tries to identify different entry points for achieving each of these goals because, of course, we know that countries and different stakeholders engage on this work from different realities and perspectives. Um, so another feature, and that you see now on the screen, is again the illustrative practices. So from 50 countries, we sent out a survey to member states, and we got a very diverse and, as you see, geographical spreads of practices on the ground, and they really show how the implementation occurs or looks differently depending on the context, of course. So different countries work with different education systems, cultural ecosystems, institutional arrangements, and these examples are supposed to inspire, to support peer learning, and again, demonstrate different approaches. Turning now to the core of the implementation guidance, which is the strategic goals. Again, for the sake of time, I won't go through all of the five. I'll just stress two, beginning with strategic goal one, which focuses on access, inclusion, and equity. The document, the framework, states very clearly all learners should have the opportunity to access, participate in, and contribute meaningfully to culture and arts education. And of course, this is especially relevant to Indigenous populations, persons with disabilities, all of those living in disadvantaged and vulnerable situations, such as refugees, migrants, displaced persons, victims of armed conflict, communities affected by crises or natural disasters. And in this survey that I mentioned that we sent to member states, so the survey was sent out in the first semester of 2025. We see actually that this is one of the least prioritized areas in national policies. So only around 10% of the reporting countries reported to have established programs that directly address access, inclusion, and equity. And of course, we know this is this is an area that's fundamental if we don't want to leave any learner behind. So what the guidance does, it provides practical tools for member states to address these challenges. So again, it starts with guiding questions, in this case, to help countries assess how accessible or inclusive their systems are. So asking what barriers to inclusion still exist within the current culture and arts education systems, or asking if culture and arts education incorporate different perspectives and actively, challenge colonial legacies, biases to ensure that learners feel represented and valued, sorry. So amongst different other recommendations, the guidance proposes concrete measures, and these, include investing in digital learning to reach learners in rural and remote areas, strengthening accessibility for persons with disabilities, strengthening the use of mother tongue as a medium of instruction, or developing pedagogical materials in local languages. So the practices, of course, we see that some of our practices are inspiring. So we have we just highlight two of them here. But so in Pakistan, you have the Radio Education Project, which focuses on combining interactive educational instruction with elements of intangible cultural heritage, and it's reached 19 marginalized areas. And then again, national programs such as the one that's called Cultural Backpacks in Estonia, Latvia, and Norway, which enable children and youth to freely access cultural events from theater to cinema to museums and so on. If we just touch upon quickly through strategic goal 2, we know that access isn't, I mean, it's very important, but it's not everything. We need the learners to have meaningful, to benefit from meaningful, high quality education experiences, of course, and that they maintain relevance throughout life. So strategic goal 4 focuses on contextual, quality, lifelong, and life-wide learning. And at the core of this goal, let's say, it's about equipping learners with the creativity, critical thinking, innovation, the interdisciplinary skills that really we learners need for today's world. The guidance, so again, questions. What are the important questions to ask? For example, are culture and the arts generally embedded across education systems, not only from childhood education, but all the way in the lifelong learning trajectory path, so in adult learning, for example? Or are they still treated as secondary or isolated subjects? Do learning environments and experience integrate knowledge systems, intangible cultural heritage, cultural practices, and expressions? The guidance to address this or proposes, let's say, a holistic approach. It encourages the integration of culture and arts, again, as a cross-cutting pedagogical approach, across different subjects, disciplines, rather than seeing it as a standalone. It proposes the use of place-based and contextual education to help learners of all ages and backgrounds strengthen their connections with intangible cultural heritage and local environments. And again, the survey demonstrated that there is important progress being made. So, for example, in Namibians and Zimbabwe, educators have worked with are working to integrate intangible cultural heritage into their teaching. So really showing how traditions, oral histories can not only enrich their learning, but also support the safeguarding of cultural heritage. And in Angola, we have an example of a cultural festival that enables learners to attend or to participate in performances by art students. So I stop here. I pass it on to Paula to go on to the next part of and go into some of the enabling conditions of the guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mathilde, and good evening to everyone. Let me now turn to some of the enabling conditions featured in the guidance. These are the essential dimensions that need to be in place in order for change to be sustainable and to make strong culture and arts education ecosystems possible. I will briefly present 2 amongst the 5. So one of the 5 conditions is partnership and interinstitutional collaboration. And this stands out as an area where significant progress is already being made. This survey finds that 65% of reporting countries have established coordination mechanisms between education and culture institutions. And the guidance recommends to strengthen these mechanisms, as well as also partnerships at the local and community levels. For instance, teachers could work with cultural institutions or creative hubs to then develop joint programs. And this commitment is already visible in some of the practices from different countries. In Saudi Arabia and Romania, the Ministries of Culture and Education adopted joint national plans to advance cultural education. Or the Pan-African Arterial Network that was created in Senegal and is now active in Côte d'Ivoire. It works with artists, NGO, and institutions to strengthen the creative and cultural sectors, while also supporting cultural workers through skills development and protection and advocacy. And then, by contrast, research, data, and assessment is one of the areas that require more attention, because only 25% of reporting countries have established some types of monitoring mechanisms to assess culture and arts education nationally. So this is a key opportunity to strengthen evidence-based approaches and support more informed policy development. So one of the recommendations of the guidance is that governments work with national statistical institutions to develop indicators to measure relevance and impact, and then to produce disaggregated data that reveals inequalities in access to culture and arts education. And one strong example is highlighted in the guidance from India that has dedicated an entire report to culture and arts education. And it also recommends in the report concrete steps such as creating a national steering committee or leveraging digital culture tools. And then on these two charts, you can see an overview of the trends we have been describing a bit. So you see encouraging progress in areas such as lifelong learning and life-wide learning, skills for sustainable futures, or the institutionalization of culture and arts education ecosystems. However, it also highlights an important gap. For example, strategic goal 3 on cultural diversity and critical engagement remains less prioritized and very important to be strengthened, as it is precisely these competencies like intercultural dialogue, critical thinking, that contribute to building cohesive and peaceful societies, right? So, and looking ahead, the survey and the guidance also point to other critical areas for improvement, such as financing and monitoring. Currently, only around 36% of reporting countries have dedicated financial commitments, and therefore mobilizing resources must be a focus, especially as spending on culture and arts education remains extremely underfinanced in the majority of countries. So on monitoring, the guidance concretely proposes member states to produce and share national progress reports on the implementation of the framework every 4 years. And in that regard, our team is currently working on a comprehensive self-assessment monitoring tool for member states that will be launched in 2027. And meanwhile, UNESCO is also establishing a global repository of good practices on culture and arts education to ensure that diverse experiences and approaches from across contexts, but also across stakeholders, are made visible internationally. So we invite all of you that are working in the realm of culture and arts education. You're very welcome to share your initiatives with us and thereby contribute to UNESCO's monitoring efforts. And one of the best ways to make this evidence visible is through initiatives like the ones happening this week. So this Culture and Arts Education Week that we're celebrating is a key moment to raise awareness and to show how culture and arts education practices and initiatives can contribute to lasting peace. So this year, a number of institutions and partners from all across the world have organized diverse activities, including workshops, conferences, concerts, or webinars like this one. And one of the activities you can find on our website is an Art for Peace online exhibition, which features young student artwork from schools worldwide, including the 2 paintings that you can see here on the screen from Uruguay and India. So this week is a reminder that culture and arts education is very much necessary, not only because it improves academic outcomes, but because it unlocks creativity, it fosters critical thinking, empathy, innovation, and essentially linking it to the topic of this week, it contributes to building peace by promoting respect for cultural diversity and a sense of belonging to shared communities. And it also provides a space where healing begins and where communities reconnect. And this is especially true in contexts of conflict and crisis. And our Two Faces Observatory does exactly this by bringing the framework to life where the need is the greatest. So we are very, very pleased to learn more about this important work in the webinar. And you are very welcome to download and learn more about the implementation guidance via the code. You can see here, currently it is available in English, French, and Spanish. Yes, and that's it. Thank you so much for your attention.